what a crazy ass week. We had a long week this week, at least for the podcast's sake. You guys didn't get anything different, but we did because we haven't hung out and talked and done stuff since last Wednesday. So it's been 9 days since we've had a podcast taping for these two gents. And so plenty of stuff has happened in that time. We had a DNC. We had some other stuff. Anyway, we'll talk about those things and more. Holler or Boo is taking registration right now. If you want to race a derby car down Central with us, it'll be a great time. Make sure you have proper padding because you might wreck, and that's the goal. If you're a vendor or own a food truck or something like that and want to come bring your food truck out, you can go to hollerboo.com and register to join us there. If you're just a normal Joe that wants to come out and hang out and have a great time, we got a great concert lineup. You can watch us run Starbucks derby cars. You can drink all sorts of fun beverages and enjoy the Halloween weekend that we are putting together, so you should take part. Almost Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. That's where that Holler Boo link is, among other cool things. And you can go to your favorite podcast provider, get us there. Like, friend, and share, follow all those cool things. Tell your friends about us, text it to them. I've got some reporting on a conversation with Chris Davis, among other things, so we'll do what we do. I want to start there, I guess. I think I'm real bummed about the breaking news on Kennedy. I understand. I get it. Like, I truly get it from his. I can at least try to understand it from his perspective. He has two options. He can run it out, try to get enough votes to cause some automatics so that he can create a new party from scratch, and that new party will get funding and finance, and it would help a future third-party candidate to, if they want to run under whatever banner he creates, to have access and stuff like that. Did you hear the interview with his running mate? That's really where this kind of the wheels fell off.
His running mate?
Yeah.
No.
So some rich ass California lady.
I'd say, yeah. Actually, I remember seeing a report on her like 2 or 3 weeks ago or whenever it was that they announced, and a couple stories of just talking about her. Yeah,
and so like, she was on some podcast somewhere and was basically like, we have two paths we could take. We could drop out now and throw our weight, whatever weight we can, behind Mr. Trump, because we can't have, like, it is not okay for Harris to win this election, in our opinion. Or we can run it out and hopefully get enough of the popular vote to trigger some of these activities to happen in the future. You know, and so for a guy like Kennedy, I don't know, it makes sense to me to, you know, batten down, like, you know, because I mean, his campaign ended when Biden stepped down. Like, the power of his campaign was how much people hated that I got to choose Trump or Biden.
I think that grew up, but I mean, I don't think his numbers were ever really trending upwards, even prior to that. I mean,
but he was he had 15. He had 15+% in a number of pretty significant, consistently accurate, semi-accurate polls. As accurate as the polls are. He had 10s and 15s pretty regularly.
Yeah, I thought 12 was maybe the highest I saw, and even that was maybe 1 or 2 states.
But before this, before this announcement came out, I mean, even before, okay, let me back up. Within a few days after the Biden stepping down, Harris is taking his place announcement, a lot of those polls started showing him dropping quickly. So those 10s, 12s went to 6s and 7s. It might be the bear shit. It might be the brainworm.
No, not the bear thing. It was 1 or 2 weeks ago that I think New York was like one of the main states that, and I think it was going to cascade to other states.
And, right.
I think rightfully so. The stories that I read on it, it sounded like he didn't live there whatsoever. I think the judge's ruling on it was pretty right, and that, you know, if his California house, I'm making it up as far as it burning down or whatever, basically if he didn't have his other California house, that, you know, it's crazy to think that he and his, well, he's got multiple animals, and he takes care of a bunch of other animals, but even just he and his wife, I don't know if they have kids, but them moving into this supposed address of like a family friend, that would be his address.
But why would he need it? He doesn't need a New York address to run for fucking president.
That's just been on his filing paperwork. For whatever reason, he has used that address, and there was like another New York address.
Right. I would bet, and I don't know this. I haven't followed much on that one, but that is a valid point. Like, it's like people who were behind him are like, well, if he's not going to be in New York and if he's not going to be in the ballot in California, then,
well, it sets a precedent for other challenges, because I think they were already challenging.
There was probably some stupid thing where it was easier to register as a third-party candidate if you're a resident of the state, because you don't have to be a resident of every fucking state. You're running for president.
I mean, I never saw a logic as to why, but I guess in other previous campaigns that he's run in, like he's always used as
California
a New York address as his address. Yeah, but I don't understand why he wouldn't just put his California address.
Yeah, I don't know. There's
That's
probably,
where your house is.
like I said, I'm guessing that there is some stipulation that makes it easier to get on the ballot as a third-party candidate if you're a resident of that state than if you're not. That'd be the only thing that would make sense on why you would do that. It gives you, like, it lessens the threshold of how many signatures you need for ballot access.
Right, but he doesn't have to live in New York to be on their ballot.
No, but if it's possible that the New York Election Commission says the threshold to be to be on the ballot is 100,000 signatures.
I mean,
for non-resident applicants, a resident applicant could do it with 50,000 signatures. I could see that being a rule on the books.
I mean, I guess I don't see the logic in focusing on New York. There are a lot of electoral votes, but I mean,
he was trying to get in all 50 states.
I mean,
His
outside
goal.
of like maybe in a pre-thought of him trying to not drain votes away from Trump during his campaign, but I don't know why he wouldn't just make Texas an address or California. That's where you're going to get more of your votes.
I don't know.
If you're trying to go for a
well,
popular.
okay, so the question is, did he use that New York address that has been ruled not really a valid address on all his applications for all the states? Or is it just for his New York application?
I think that's on his application.
All right, well, then that's a problem, I guess. I don't know. Residency rules for people like him, which I say people like him broadly speaking. There's a lot of people like him with their multiple house lifestyles and shit like that. That you're like, I mean, Trump was the same way. He had a New York City residence and he has his Florida residence, and depending on the occasion, he'll use one or the other, whichever one suits him for this current time frame. And the rules of validating your residency requirements are pretty iffy.
I know the Mar-a-Lago one's weird because it's something to where he can't stay there the whole year, or he has to stay there a certain amount of time to be considered a resident.
Yeah, there's some fuckery in that, but I don't know. I guess I don't feel too bad. Anybody who has the ability to have fuckery in that, I don't really like. Yeah, I don't really feel bad for them because they're probably pretty wealthy. Not that there's anything wrong with being wealthy. I'm just saying.
But with that in mind, I think that would.
I'm sure that hurt him too.
I think that would tank a campaign more than.
But again, the moral of the story here is that he has a couple of factors that are taking his campaign. I truly believe that a huge chunk of it was, like, there was multiple polls that showed 70 plus 80% of the population who had said any other candidates but these two.
Right.
And so
I don't know if it was that high, but yes,
there was. I know there were some 70s, maybe not 80.
It might have been like 70% of unregistered voters or uncommitted voters or something like that.
Maybe. Okay. Anyway, no, I think it's more. I think it was a general pop vote, but anyway, it doesn't matter. There was a significant sum of people who were totally put off by the idea that we were going to have a Biden-Trump rematch.
Right.
We hated it the first time. We're hating it the second time. Please don't do this again.
Right.
And both parties, through their own little sets of fuckery, just made it happen again. And a lot of people were really upset by that. And I think a lot of people were at least open to the conversation of maybe voting third party because of that. And then when half of that, I can't stand the idea of this ballot, went away and went to anybody new, that said, okay, now I can vote for the Democrats and not feel as dirty about it because X, Y, Z. So anyway, either way, those factors compound to say, okay, this campaign is dead. I have very little chance. I might be able to pull off the percentage requirements to create a new party, but that's the maximum that I'm going to be able to pull off. Or I can try to rally what little bit of support I have left behind the candidate of the two that are left that I like better, who is likely to give me a cabinet position in return. Maybe that's the option I want to go for, which seems to be the option they picked. And again, for a dude like him who feels like he has the ability to make significant impact quickly, because he wants like the health czar or something like that.
Huh?
He wants something to do with like health and human services. Like he wants the HHS director.
Yeah.
But it's like another thing that I'd heard is that there's no way the Senate will confirm him as a director of health and human services.
Is it a majority or is it a 2/3? I can't remember what it takes to confirm for a lot of those.
Yeah, I don't know.
It may be a simple majority.
But I mean, even at that, unless there's some significant craziness in the handful of senatorial races that happens, it's still at best a 50-50 split. But I guess you would have J.D. Vance, if Trump wins, as the tiebreaker this time around.
Yeah, I was trying to find his quote that I thought was kind of odd about him taking himself off the ballot, but he was also still kind of something that was basically like, if you're to his supporters, he's like, if you live in a blue state, still go out and vote for me, but if you live in a red state, please don't do that. Don't vote for me. Because, like I said, it's...
No, if you live in a red state...
2 weeks before, I guess, ballots start getting printed.
I think it's if you live in a red state, go ahead and vote for me because Trump's going to win that state anyway. If you live in a blue state, don't vote for me because Trump might have a chance to sneak by. It's really the battleground states are all that matters. Because I might still vote for him.
No, he said he wanted blue state voters to vote for him. Because then that would take more Harris votes. So he wants Democrats to vote.
Well, if you're a Democrat, right.
He wants Democrats to vote for him in the blue states.
Right, because that would open the door for Trump to sneak a blue state in and get those electoral college votes.
Yeah, I guess.
Either way, whatever.
Yeah. I just thought it was weird. I was like, huh? Like, what? Because like you said, it's coming up so close that I think there are states where he's not going to be able to remove himself from the ballot. He can just encourage people to like, hey, don't do it.
Right. And so I did. I emailed Mr. Chris Davis on the topic, and it's really not in his wheelhouse. Essentially, he only goes him and the Knox
That's more like state
County Election Commission only.
Right.
The state gives them a list of names to put on the ballot,
right.
Except for county and city races, and then that's their job is to populate those. And so basically, he was telling in a little bit of back and forth. We to clarify it. It's like, as of right now, the only thing that he knows is going on the ballot is Trump Vance and electors for Trump Vance, because the Republican National Convention has already submitted their paperwork to Tennessee, and Tennessee has already processed it, and that's there. He expects that early this coming week, the DNC will submit their paperwork, and he'll have the Harris Waltz, thank you, with all their electors to add to the ballot. And then he knows Jill Stein and some electors for Jill Stein is coming. But other than that, he's not sure who else is going to be on it. Basically, as far as he knew right now, last he'd heard anything on it is that they're still trying to verify signatures for Kennedy for eligibility. And so the last question I asked him, which he doesn't know the answer, we're not really sure what the answer is. I'm not saying he doesn't know the answer because it's not his job.
Right.
So procedurally, is it, hey, I'm not running anymore, and they just stop the verification process? Or since they started the verification process, they're obliged to finish it, and he will have to produce paperwork pulling himself off the ballot? Or they finished the verification, they decided he verified, and they just leave him on the ballot? I don't know which. Depends
on where it would be in that process. Like you said, if he's already dropped out, are they required to still validate?
Right. I'm under the assumption that they started the process, they're going to finish the process, unless there is some sort of paperwork filing that says, hey, I'm out, and then they'll quit.
Yeah, I would think they would just kind of stop where they're at in it. He's already on the ballot. We'll still count. We'll still count his vote tallies in the general.
Well, but I'm saying they haven't verified that he's going to be on the ballot yet anyway. Yeah. And so what I'm thinking, what I would assume the procedure here is that a public announcement is not an official self-removal from a ballot.
Yeah, because like the Pennsylvania thing, it was like an official, he had like a lawyer that submitted the paperwork.
Right, and so...
Which that's what started the whole endorsing Trump when I first read it like a day or two ago. It had kind of slipped out. Because like I said, I think earlier in the day, his campaign had put out that like, no, that was a mistake in the filing. I think the story kind of came out earlier than it was supposed to.
Yeah.
But that was a filing, and I thought that was even weirder that they had to, obviously they've got to file to have themselves removed. But it sounded like a part of that filing, he was also endorsing Trump. And I was like, wait, as part of your filing, do you have to endorse a candidate?
I don't know.
The way it was worded, it made it sound like they were filing to be removed and endorsing a candidate as a part of their paperwork they were submitting to the Pennsylvania Election Commission. And I was like, wait, you have to do that? That's odd.
Yeah, it is a little interesting. So, anyway, that's the Kennedy thing. I'm bummed. If he's on the ballot, I might still vote for him anyway. Because
you're throwing your vote away.
Hell yeah, I'm throwing my vote away. But I guess I'm voting for Trump if you're a Democrat. I'm voting for Harris if you're a Republican. But I'm in Tennessee, so I'm voting for Trump. I mean, really. You and I are voting for Trump, whether we vote for Trump or not.
Yay. 4 more years.
Again. But, to me, that whole thing about the thing that his VP was talking about in that podcast is why I was thinking about voting for him in the first place. There are some rules in play that an independent third-party candidate gets X number of votes or some sort of percentage mark. If they can hit some stuff like that, like she said, it's like 13 million, which is not a lot considering a national campaigning thing, but it's like 13 million in automatic ballot access for the next election. So 13 million to start the party and automatic ballot access for that party.
Right.
That's fucking huge. That's a lot. That would be a very significant thing if Kennedy can bring in some people that can make a platform that makes sense and stuff like that. It could be a significant thing.
Can they change the name of that party once they get recognition?
I mean, it wouldn't be...
Or is this kind of like, if you get recognition for that party, you better be sure this is what you want to call it?
Yeah, I don't know how that goes. Like, I don't know.
Odd question. So I'm all for trying to get some kind of third party, a recognition, just to get, like you said, that federal funding once you hit that benchmark.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where I'm all screwy on it anyway. So, anyway, with that, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that. We'll see. I don't know. And so if I'm going back to I guess I'm weird. Jesse laughed at me when I said this, that I think my number one issue when I'm looking at presidential picks is going to be foreign policy. Right. And I'm probably one of like 7 people in the United States that thinks of it that way. That was Jesse's kind of giggly joke at me. Yeah, if I'm going to hold on to the idea of which one of the people that I can vote for, am I comfortable with having the nuclear codes, I'm going to have to put some more thought into it. Because, I mean, I don't know. I get the whole, like, Kamala Harris just doesn't, I get nothing out of that person. I feel no way about that person. I don't feel like other than generic Democratic platform stuff, like, I don't feel like there's anything that's real about that person. That's my vibes on Kamala.
Okay.
Like what we did it last week, right? We pulled up her website. And we went through it, and really it's just bio stuff. There's no policy.
Is that last week? Yeah.
Yeah. Now the party put out their platform as part of their convention, which is standard ops.
Right.
And usually the candidate on top of the ticket has something to do with that platform, and we'll see. But I don't like I said, and I did hear an interesting one. I don't know the facts on this one, but this guy Ryan Grimm, who used to write for, I can't remember. He's been around. He's been a DC kind of guy, but he just actually started his own like sub-base news service, and he's a guest on Breaking Points on the regular. He's a left-leaning dude, but he's like, look, if you go back and like, remember we were talking a couple weeks ago about how I got all pissy about somebody who said that Kamala got 200 and whatever million or 60 something million votes because they're counting her. Right. They're counting her as getting the votes when she was vice president on a ticket, which I thought was dumb. Apparently, if you go back into some of her California races, there was not a lot of race in a lot of those races either. Like, basically, his take is like she's never really won anything. The only time she had a real campaign was for her first presidential run, and she got walloped real quick in that presidential primary process. Now, I don't know the details on that.
Her Senate race was pretty much uncontested?
Yeah. There was like a token Republican in California, which California hasn't had a Republican senator in many moons. They have Republican House reps, but not senators. What?
They've got more than McCarthy. I just don't see California as an uber red state. It's mostly blue. Sorry, yeah, as an uber blue state.
It's right. It's very much mostly blue. I mean, you've had Chuck Schumer, and it's been Chuck Schumer forever, and some other Democrat.
So Jackson Lee? No, that was a congresswoman.
You know, who was it that Marcia replaced here in Tennessee?
Is it Haggerty?
No, Haggerty's the other one currently.
That's right. I'm not sure.
Because, or maybe it's Haggerty. One of the two of them. It was a Tennessee Republican senator who had been the Republican senator from Tennessee for like 4 terms or something like that, in the Senate 6 years. So it'd been 20-something years that we had that same one, and so they're like that because that Blackburn primary was huge because there were a bunch of Republicans fighting hard for that primary. Because in Tennessee, if you win the Republican primary for a federal Senate seat, you're going to be the senator from Tennessee. And so apparently in Kamala's senatorial race, she had one primary opponent, which was a very unpopular, unskilled, unsupported candidate. And so you beat somebody in a primary that's not even really running, and you're a Democrat in a Senate race in California, and you already won. Anyway, I don't know. Like I said, this is what they were talking about. I don't know it for facts.
Right.
But I do know that that's not uncommon in certain states and stuff like that. But that being said, Blackburn and who was it? Was it one of the Haslams?
No, I don't think so.
Who was it that ran against Blackburn last time?
No, maybe it was Haslam. That's right. Yeah, I think it was.
Or was it Randy? It was Randy Boyd.
No, it wasn't a senator.
He ran for something. Did he run for governor? Anyway,
Boyd
ran for something. State level. He might have run for governor.
Yeah, I remember because I think he had the big water tower was one of his campaign signs.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Does 6 or half dozen, whichever one it was. Yeah. Anyway, moral of the story is, but in the version in Tennessee, at least, that primary was the big deal, and it was a real fight. Where, again, the report that this guy was saying is that primary was not a fight for Kamala in her senator race in California. Anyway,
I want to say it was a Haslam. So I want to say there being some big thing about he wasn't going to run again. He decided he wasn't going to run for his second term.
Right. He went and made a podcast.
Is that what it was?
That's him and Bredesen. Huh. It's like it's supposed to be this because
he became more of a moderate Republican,
right? Which what's his face was a very moderate Democrat,
former governor.
Yeah, and so it's like, okay, we've got two very moderate people,
arguably on opposite sides of the aisle,
right? But they're on the aisle seat, but they are on the other sides of the aisle. But they're supposed to be the model of how you treat people from the other side of it, like that we can be on the other side of the aisle and treat each other well. It's like, yeah, but you guys are like 97% the same. You have probably like 4 issues that you really care about that you're actually opposite on. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the point being is I don't have any political feel for Kamala and what she actually stands for, what she actually cares about, what she actually wants to do, other than, all I've seen so far in her campaigning and stuff like that has been cop first criminal, which is an interesting take from a Democrat, but she's the cop against criminal Trump, and abortion rights, which I already told you my prediction if she becomes president on what's going to happen with abortion rights. I truly, truly, truly 100% believe that she will put no real effort into getting abortion codified. Not because she doesn't necessarily want it to be codified, but because that is such a huge tool for them to win elections that it is not in their best interest to actually do it. Which is why Trump is so perfectly dumb. If he was a good Republican, he wouldn't have done that. He would not have put the justices in place to overturn Roe Wade.
Are you discounting a politician for actually upholding a campaign promise?
I'm surprised. Like, I find it fascinating. It's amazing.
The one thing,
and what's
the
crazy,
one time they actually fulfill a promise,
and it's getting him killed with his base right now because he's trying hard not to own the fact that he did it. But he is trying to own that he did it. Like he's walking this weird tightrope trying to play both sides, and it's not going well.
Yeah, I mean, he's got more than one recording of him, basically saying that, yeah, I did that. Look what I did.
Right, which is not. I mean, it's kind of funny that Trump is actually fairly reasonable on how he actually feels about abortion. He was just dumb enough to do the thing that the super far evangelical portion.
I don't know how he honestly feels about it. I think he's always just playing to whoever. At that time, he was playing at that side of the base, and now, when he gets pushed back on it, he was like, "Oh wait, no, I totally didn't feel that way. That's crazy." I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so I don't know. We're gonna go from here. That's the presidential stuff.
Did you watch any of the DNC?
A little bit here and there. I caught some clips. Breaking Points was actually there. They did a whole thing.
I watched theirs. I think it came out today. I watched maybe the first 20, 30 minutes of their DNC kind of recap.
Yeah. I haven't seen their total recap. They were doing daily ones.
Yeah.
So basically they were there, and they were using one of the... Apparently there's a Barstool Chicago that they knew some people at, and so they were borrowing the Barstool Chicago studio to do their show. And so what they were doing is they would get up in the morning, and they would recap yesterday, and then they would go into the United Center and do their thing.
Yeah. Did I read correctly? I swear the capacity was like 800. For how many people were in the DNC?
No, it's probably
I kept saying 800.
30,000.
I mean, as far as they had in attendance, because a good
delegates, maybe like actual delegates being there. I don't know how many. I don't know how many people who weren't delegates or.
I was kind of curious of the capacity because I kept reading 800. Maybe that was just 800 delegates.
I mean, they made a big stake. I mean, the Wednesday night was probably the most gangster shit I've ever seen in my life. Wednesday night, Kamala is in Milwaukee in the whatever center that the RNC was in.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
15,000 people at a rally in Milwaukee. Then they pause their thing in Milwaukee, get a satellite link up, and show and she speaks to the Chicago she speaks to the DNC in Chicago through the video feed while at her rally.
I thought she showed up in Chicago at the very end of it.
Well, on Thursday she came to Chicago and did a speech.
Right, I know.
But no, Wednesday she was in Milwaukee doing her thing with that rally, but part of that rally they cast into the DNC right in the middle of prime time, so we all got to see it if you were watching it as it happened. Yeah. So 17,000 people in the arena in Milwaukee, another 15,000 or whatever in the United Center in Chicago, all super stoked. And I think there was a crowd size joke or two somewhere in there.
They made a few.
Yeah. Lil Wayne was a nice, not Lil Wayne, Lil Jon was a nice touch for the Georgia delegate call out.
Saw that. I think my parents were watching it, and I was like, wait, what the fuck? Look at the tail. I was like, what the hell's going on?
I think it was Sagar. He had probably the best, kind of soft take. It's like, no, actually, no, it was Emily. Anyway, it doesn't matter who it was. It's like there was, the difference in the RNC and the DNC is, the DNC was, produced by Hollywood. It was flashy. It was exciting. It had, it was like watching the Olympics. It had that feel of we're going on to the next thing, and then we're going on to the next thing, and we're going to hype you up the thing that's about to happen, but we're going to go over here, and then we're going to come back to this thing. Where the RNC was a little bit more subdued and serious, which is weird because Trump's there, but he just got shot.
In places.
He just got shot, but it doesn't matter.
Kid Rock came out and put on a rock
and
show.
Hulk Hogan did his thing too.
Right,
yeah.
Ripped off his shirt. I did see a couple things that juxtaposed the two. Mainly kind of the first two nights, I guess, of each one, where they've got the person up there kind of calling up along the delegates, and there was just this older lady for the RNC, and it was Georgia, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And
but I think... all right, so there's two thoughts that crossed my head today when I was thinking about it.
I don't know how much those two were kind of stayed. Was it really that non-raucous when they were going through the delegate picks?
I don't know. I didn't really watch much of either one. I just saw some recap coverage. Can you think of a time in U.S. history where a president, their vice president, and their vice president all became president? If Kamala wins, this will be a third generation of the Obama White House.
No, I did see something last night that was, I hadn't really thought of it, but they were giving credit to Michelle, because I guess there's been, kind of in your thought that there's been some kind of play, of dynasties in the DNC. And they were like, if she really wanted to run, she could have run.
Yeah.
And would have been great. But so they were kind of giving her credit for it, of her, not trying to pick up the reins.
Right.
I was like, I hadn't really thought about that. I was like, but yeah.
She
I think Michelle Obama is still likable across the U.S.
She doesn't want it because she could. If she would, that was a joke that Ryan said on the Ryan Grimm said in the podcast. He's like, I think Michelle could have finished her speech and said, you know what? I do want to be president. and they would have figured out some procedural way to make it happen right then and there. She was so excited, and everybody's so excited about her, like the capital that she has as whatever. But it's interesting, like you think of like there's some rules at play here that say the current incumbent president was on the first night after prime time, which is pretty crazy. That is pretty abnormal.
He was the last speaker.
Okay, Al Gore, when Al Gore was running for president, guarantee you Bill Clinton was not the last speaker on the first night of the DNC.
Okay,
I'm just saying. Like, I think that is a significant thing that happened. If you're a dork about it, and I guess I'm a dork about it. All right. So what is it? The Obamas spoke on Wednesday.
Yeah,
and Bill spoke on Thursday.
Yeah. So
the current president, the immediate prior president to Kamala, if she wins, spoke on night one. The president before her, or before him, speaks on night two, and the president before him speaks on night three. That seems backwards to me. You think it would go in chronological order would make more sense.
They decided to go reverse chronologically.
Apparently. Ooh. I think it's weird.
Oh my gosh.
I think it says how the party feels about Joe. I did see a great quote from this girl Michelle that I run into on the Facebook a lot that I thought was great. It was a meme that she shared. I thought it was hilarious and it was perfect and it was accurate, and then it was doubly funny because it was coming from her, who was a big vote Joe no matter what person up until mid-July. But it was, "You had me at the full sentences," and I said, "Yep, that sounds right." And then I immediately went, "But weren't you the one that says you were voting for Biden? Didn't matter. So what if full sentences really matter to you?" But I didn't go into that. But anyway, I thought it was a funny meme, and I thought it was a well articulated, simple, proper meme, like meme 101, like one sentence said everything you needed to say. Solid meme.
Cool.
All right, so you want to talk about the not so military industrial complex? What we know?
Yeah, if you want to.
I mean,
I didn't dig any more into it. So
all right, so I did a little bit. So let's see. Let me find it here. This is RyanMcBeth.com. He has a YouTube channel. He is currently a private security contractor who does YouTube videos explaining different things. You first sent it to me because he was making a point about breaking points being intentionally misinforming people, which I take a little issue with sort of what he's saying. Like, I understand, I guess, what he's after in the point he was making, but I still think it's like, one, like his first point is, well, the rocket fuel goes bad eventually in these rockets that we're giving to Ukraine.
right.
So we might as well give it to somebody to kill people with instead of having to pay to deconstruct them.
Yeah, well, there's some truth to that.
I mean, hold on, dude. I lost my train of thought. I get the premise.
Yeah.
Right. I get the premise of the idea. Yeah, yes, it makes sense insofar as the cost to deconstruct them doesn't outweigh the potential cost of letting somebody else use them. Which then he then goes on to say, basically, he's like, one, the U.S. Army or the U.S. military is built for a two-front war. We are capable of having a ground war with Russia and a active war in the Middle East, because the Army and the Marines will do the Russia thing, and the Navy and the rest of the Marines would do the Middle East thing, and we could do it at the same time, and it wouldn't be that big deal.
I don't remember going into that.
Yeah, it's like okay. I mean, that maybe sure. You seem to be more expert on this.
I see that more of trying to like allay the fears of, there was a big thing like, oh, we're depleting our whole stockpiles and we're not going to have anything.
I mean, I do believe we are. That's something that I didn't see him pick on specifically, but that is something that Sagar's talked about before. Is that it goes on to the second thing is that this truth about the military industrial complex video that we're going into is that, like Texas Instruments, who got bought up by Boeing or whatever it is, at least their missile division and all that kind of shit, who make some of these rockets, have tuned down their factories because they were making more than were getting ordered and they couldn't sell them. And, they'd started making less. or stopped making them altogether because the Pentagon wasn't ordering them. And now the Pentagon's, moving a whole bunch real fast, and these factories are having to spin back up to get production back up. And it takes time to get these factories rolling again.
That was in the video?
No, that's just something. That's something.
Oh, okay.
That
I was like, I don't remember him talking about this.
Yeah, it's like he does talk about like the F-35 thing and all the bajillion pieces that it takes in all the different places, all the places coming from. He does a freaking Milton Friedman, the pencil thing.
Yeah,
that's a Milton Friedman thing.
Oh, is it?
Which I thought was kind of funny, but and it's a good example of how supply chains and stuff like that work. It's a perfectly good example. The simple pencil takes 7 different nations to make. Right. And so the F-35, who has like 30,000 parts, each of those parts takes more than most of those parts can't get made uniformly in the United States. They get made all over the world, and they get assembled here and there and everywhere, and then we make the thing. Anyway, but the thing that he was picking on Sagar for was that Sagar was basically saying we are supporting an invasion of Russia.
That was his first point, yeah.
Which, this is a semantics argument. I'm going to channel the one and only AC and say we need to have some working definitions of some terms here. What does an invasion or incursion mean? What does supporting mean? We are supporting, because to me, it seems pretty straightforward. The definition of invasion is one nation. Military enters into another nation. That's an invasion or incursion. Support means whether material or people assisting a nation in combat, whether it's with materials or people. So my definition of we assisted Ukraine we supported Ukraine in invading Russia. I think that is definitionally correct as far as I'm concerned. Now, the military definition might be a little different than mine, and the strategic purpose and reason for this, that, and the other. And then his argument that we have no control over what Ukraine does. It's like, you're right, we don't. We have no control over what Ukraine does with the weapons we give them. But it doesn't mean that we're not on the hook for some of the actions they take with our weapons. Doesn't mean we don't hold some responsibility for their actions. I think I think to me that goes to the same thing that's going on in Israel right now. One of the things that Breaking Points was very adamant about making sure they got coverage on was some of the protests. And they're in the Democratic Party right now. There's a lot of disagreement about the Palestine, Gaza, Israel situation. There are a lot of Democrats who are, quote, pro-Palestinian, who think that these people should have the right to live and stuff like that. So anyway, there's this doctor lady who's part of the uncommitted movement. Remember that whole thing? There's some significant sum of delegates, like Michigan did it, where people voted uncommitted to their delegates.
Yeah.
And so there is a not insignificant number of people whom were delegates to the DNC who were not obliged by the voting to vote for Biden, because that's who they actually were asked to vote for, which gets at a whole nother level of shit because Biden's not even an option anymore. But the ones that were voted as uncommitted, that was their whole thing. It was all a Palestine thing. And so in their different stuff that they were trying to lobby and do the work and make the maneuvers that you do politically to get some attention on what they're trying to get and get some promises out of Kamala to do what they want to get their votes, they brought in this Palestinian American woman who is a doctor who has spent time in Gaza recently, who's telling the story of what it's like over there currently and this, that, and the other, talking about how she was in
who got this woman to talk to who?
This was the uncommitted delegation to the DNC.
Right. Got this woman to come speak to who?
They brought her with the hopes that they'd actually get her on stage to speak to the entire DNC.
Okay. You lost me. And
sorry. Then
the theys and the hers.
That was right. That was their intent, was that they wanted to get her on stage. That was one of the things they were asking. It's like, from the Harris campaign, if you want our uncommitted delegate votes, we'd like you to put this person on stage. We'd like you to do a panel. Apparently a bunch of panels go on all around the DNC while it's happening. Huh. There's a bunch of different little mini conferences that go on here, there, and everywhere on different topics and stuff like that. I guess some of it's where they actually settle on platform. Like, they have different platform issues that they have 3 or 4 options on, and they get there's a certain set of people that get assigned to go to that thing, and they vote on how they're going to treat option X.
Oh, yeah. In years past, the convention was where you nominated and decided on your candidate.
Right. But it's also where you pick platform issues,
right,
where they settle some platform issues. So anyway, they brought this lady in, and she's telling the story about how she was sitting there doing her field doctoring thing, and she goes into this house that's been bombed, and there is a dud bomb sitting in the living room of this house that had fallen through the roof, and there's a hole, and it follows the big American flag on the nose of this bomb.
Yeah,
and it's like, I don't care who you are. When that thing fell through your roof, you hate the people that carry that flag on their shoulder. I would think that would be the natural reaction for most people. They trying to go through the hurdles of going, well, just because that's on there doesn't mean that they were the ones that did it. It's the people that they gave that to that did it to me. I hate them, not the people whose flag that's on it. Where there's consequences, the point of what I'm trying to get to. That was a long story to get into. Go back to where we started this is there's consequence to what Ukraine does with our weapons. There's consequence to what Israel does with our weapons. There's consequences for us.
Okay. Are you advocating for we just stop all military sales to any country?
I don't know. That's
I don't know where you're going with that.
Well, I'm trying to bring it back around.
I get the point you're trying to make.
I'm trying to get back around is I'll acknowledge that this Ryan Macbeth guy is probably much more intelligent on the topic than I am. But I need some help understanding how some word definitions here, because I again, the first point he makes out the gate is the invasion thing.
Well, then stop focusing on that point.
Well, I'm trying to.
That wasn't why I sent you. I was mainly just looking at the numbers. I think there was something else in the video.
The second one was the truth about the military-industrial complex thing, which has its own issues. And I watched you that one. He does the quote. There was two separate. Right, the great Eisenhower quote on his farewell speech as president is basically beware the military-industrial complex, which he was right, and it's real. And this Macbeth guy agrees that through the Cold War, the military-industrial complex did have a lot of sway and a lot of power, because you had, a lot of energy and effort going into weapon systems, and we went from 7 nuclear weapons to 24,000 nuclear weapons in a decade.
Yeah.
One thing that I was trying to figure out some of his stuff. One of the things I have issue with when I was watching it, didn't get a chance to break it down all the way, but I'm watching this thing, and he keeps referencing, one of the things he references, if the military-industrial complex is so strong and powerful, then why is the U.S. Army gone from X number of units to X number minus whatever? The numbers keep going down. The Navy has dropped from this many warships to this many warships.
Yeah,
and it's okay, but every one of those he did, it was from 1970 to the mid 90s. And so as he's doing that, it's okay, I see what you mean. I don't know what happened post 9/11, but I got a feeling that those numbers went up.
I want to say, I think it was just a line graph that he did where he showed that. I meant to go back and try to zoom and look at see what exactly was on the X and Y axis, because it's easy to kind of skew a line graph. But I had that same thought as well. Was after 9/11 it would have ramped up, but I want to say the line he's showing was trending downwards and was continuing in the downward trajectory. Because I thought that same thing. I was like, well, obviously, we were scaling down, like you said, towards the end of the night.
Post-Vietnam.
Post-Cold War. I mean, the wall didn't fall till 89.
Right. But he's also talking about how, the first invasion of Iraq was, the greatest example of the way the U.S. military is designed to work in this kind of stuff is...
Well, that was where we still had all of that weapon. That was towards the end of that kind of, major spending.
Right, but we also spent, right. We also dumped decades of energy and effort and technology and stuff onto Iraq. It's not like this is a superpower we were squaring off with. So you can't really flex too hard that we went and destroyed I wouldn't second
call them
world nation.
Quite an unforbiddable. I mean, compared to the U.S., obviously.
Right.
But I mean, they've been waging wars with Iran. I'm pretty sure in the 70s, and probably with other nations. So this wasn't their first rodeo. I don't think they were completely wet behind the ear soldiers.
Right. And so he went back to this. He kept talking about how if the military industrial was so big and powerful and strong, then they should be making a ton of money.
Right.
And so he built this spreadsheet. I love me some spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And so I went through and I was digging through his little spreadsheet, and he does some great jobs citing his work. He's got links to all the different places where he pulled this information. He makes fun of the idea that the real revenue's hidden because they're in whatever, which I would kind of argue that some of it is. But the first thing that I saw when I looked at it is I have this set right here that I've highlighted in orange. Mm-hmm. At least those 4 companies are Department of Defense supply companies, major suppliers to the Department of Defense. Okay, so for the people just listening, the people listening, because we don't have a video feed to this anyway. So he's got it broken down in defense contractors, which there's 5, tech companies, pharmaceutical companies, consumer product companies. So the point he's trying to make in this graph or in this spreadsheet is he's got the top 5 companies in each of these sectors of the economy. And his point is that if the big bag wolf that is defense companies is so massive and so powerful and has so much political sway in this and the other, you'd think they would be money-making machines and they would be the most wealthy companies in the nation. And so he's comparing, the top 5 defense companies, tech companies, pharmaceutical companies, consumer products companies, right? You'd think, Boeing being this super powerful giant, they can just say, hey, government, give me $10 million, and they'll just do it just because they asked or whatever, because that's how we all see the big bad wolf that is the military-industrial complex, right? You'd think that it would be a good money. Now, Boeing, in his example, in 2023, lost to something, was a negative $2-something billion in revenue for the year.
Yeah.
Or in earnings for the year, not revenue.
Yeah, net earnings, yeah.
Right, $78 billion. It's also Boeing Lockheed's the one making the F-35, isn't it?
I don't know.
Might be Boeing. Anyway, that thing's been its own train wreck.
That's the one they canceled, right?
I don't remember.
Okay, there was one big one that they canceled. They spent billions of dollars, and then
I thought it was $1 trillion.
$1 trillion dollars. And we're finally like, yeah, we're giving up on this.
Yeah,
it's not going to work.
So be it. But so my first critique of this, Mr. Ryan, if you happen to hear this, you can do a 20-minute video on how stupid I am. It will be very easy for you. Don't worry. But so now, and he may have it further in his list, but no, he's not, because what he's doing. So he takes Boeing, for example, and his defense companies. Boeing's total revenue, it's about $78 billion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm assuming, and if you go look at the filing, it says the same thing. This is Boeing proper. This isn't the military division of Boeing. This is Boeing proper. So this includes their commercial airlines, airliners that they make, right? It is.
I don't know if it's a separate entity monetary-wise.
I don't believe it is.
Right.
I could be incorrect on that, but I do not believe it is. I believe it's the same company.
I think they're one entity.
Because I think that's part of why Boeing lost $2.2 billion, because their commercial aircraft side has had a lot of issues in the past couple of years. Windows falling off and door seals not working and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so my point in that is that, and so he's got them listed by revenue. That's how he's got, the more revenue, the higher you are on the list. Well, if you go down to tech companies, the highest revenuing company in this entire list is Amazon at $578 billion in revenue.
Apple, 996.
Amazon, the top grossing company.
Oh, sorry, I was
revenue.
looking at
not in earnings, in revenue.
Yeah.
Is Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon has a multi-billion-dollar contract with the Department of Defense for their cloud services.
Okay.
Amazon is a defense contractor. He's comparing quote real defense contractors like Boeing to Amazon, but leaving out the fact that Amazon is a defense contractor. It is. It's a fact. Like that one, I know 100% for a fact. Google has defense contracts.
I know they had a big to-do about who was going to do their cloud computing. Is that the only connection?
Amazon has a separate.
You know of?
Amazon has a separate federal contract for the government at large in their cloud services, but they have a specific, unique contract with the Department of Defense. That's one of them. I don't know. I'm sure they have more, but that's the one I know of off the top of my head. Yes.
Okay, you would say at most what was the contract for, billions wise?
I think it was in like the 300 or 400 billion or something like that.
300 or 400 billion.
I think so. I think it was. It was up there. Maybe 100 billion. Maybe, I don't know. Let me see if I can find it again. Too many things at once.
I mean, I get where you're going with that. I don't know if I would. Yes, that would kind of be considered a defense contractor and providing a service. I think more of a defense contractor as far as, supplying hardware, essentially.
I mean, okay. So then I'll put my AC hat on and we'll say maybe we messed up.
Let's define what hardware.
We should have. Then that might. And again, I think, and this is where, as much as it annoys me.
Well, I mean, you were trying to differentiate Boeing, military and their commercial side. That's all lumped into one. So same thing with the alphabet.
That's my point. Is that if he's going to lump the entire company into the stat, then Amazon should be in the defense side.
All right, see what you can find. What'd you find? I was going to say, fine, completely subtract that out, and then we'll see if the numbers still look astray. $9 billion.
The Joint Warfighting Cloud Capability Multiple Award Agreement comprises 4 contracts amounting $9 billion.
Okay, so 4 separate contracts totaling $9 billion.
Okay.
All right, so subtract. Let's say that was all Amazon. Subtract $9 billion. Where are we at?
Amazon is still bigger than Boeing.
Okay.
Amazon is bigger
take it out of their earnings.
Amazon is
take
bigger
it out. Take that completely out of their earnings.
Okay, they earn more than any of the quote defense contractors.
Okay,
according to him.
So what's your point?
My point is I don't understand like his comparables don't make sense to me. Is my point. If you're going to compare Boeing to Amazon, and say, well, because okay, so the argument is that the military industrial complex doesn't exist. That was his statement. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's a figment of your imagination.
They do exist, just not as the boogeyman that we all think of it as. And I think that's how I took it. Okay. That's why he pointed out. It's like, yes, they are major companies, but if you look at their earnings, they are not this like great Goliath of corporations that we kind of perceive them to be.
Sure. Just
kind of, molding the, and most of the U.S. budget is defense budget.
Right.
And I think that's where, I myself made that kind of.
And I think, I think it's illogical.
Leap.
I think it's illogical, not very particularly large leap, because you talk like, you hear like because he breaks it down as like the series of BRAC closures or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
He's talking about that thing, and there's actually a reference to it in House of Cards, which
that's I remember that.
Yeah, that's a thing. I mean, that's not that. At least that's a common trope about the way our House and Reps work is that you have a key factory that does something that's funded federally. You vote certain ways to keep the factory in your state. Yeah. You're not going to vote even if you disagree with what it is. Your ability to get elected is greatly
save
hampered.
Jobs, and you can run on that.
If you vote to close a factory in your state, you're going to have a really hard time winning another election in your state.
Right.
Even if the factory is doing something that you're obliged to, you have to shut it down. We have to shut one down somewhere because X, Y, or Z.
Right.
Now that being said, the BRAC thing is not factories. The BRAC thing is bases.
Right.
And installations.
Right. Which even those, you've got restaurants and kind of infrastructure around that.
Right. But in quote military, like in defense spending, okay, you're not spending it on the facilities. That doesn't mean you're spending more or less on equipment. You're just putting the equipment somewhere else.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just it's an inference that I don't disagree with him necessarily on, but he lets that inference just kind of sit there. It's like, well, if we shut down a base, then all the equipment that base was buying to function, we won't buy anymore. It's like, well, maybe we might just, do we just dissolve all those troops and they go back to the general population, or do they get sent to other bases? Do they get to finish their tours? Probably get sent to another base.
As far as personnel, yeah, you would probably be assigned to a different home base. I don't even know if you have a home base.
So if the personnel gets moved, a lot of the equipment that whatever that unit does, if it's an armored division or whatever, all the tanks and stuff go with them to a new base.
I would think they would kind of divvy that up.
Or they might split it up between.
That's where you could argue that's saving another company money. They've got an extra tank that they don't have to have, reconditioned or whatever.
Maybe. I don't know. That'd be a fun little rabbit hole to follow through. But I mean, I think, at some point, there's the, like Fort Knox, right? Fort Knox is like a huge armored tank base, right? Like it's like
armored cavalry.
The first armored cavalry division or some shit like that. So they shut Fort Knox down, empty the gold that's not or is in there. I don't know. Move the gold somewhere else. But all those tanks, they're not just going to leave them there or sell them off. All those tanks are going to go to other bases.
Right.
Now, does that mean the other base doesn't have to buy a new tank that they were planning on buying? Maybe. Or they just add that to the current inventory and continue doing what they're doing, because they're bringing a whole tank division with them. They're bringing all the guys that operate the tanks and operate the guns and do all that stuff. So it's foreseeable that they still need more tanks. Just because they shut the base down doesn't mean they shut the need for tanks down.
Yeah.
But anyway, Johnson & Johnson, obviously, like we know that one from the pandemic. They do huge contracts with the military.
What military contracts do they have?
The COVID vaccine that the VA bought was the Johnson & Johnson one.
Okay. That's not a military contract.
It's you don't okay. I'm sorry. You don't think that the Department of Defense doesn't have significant contracts with pharmaceutical makers? Do you think they just go and buy regular drugs off the shelf like me and you do?
No.
So you think that the medical units on these armies have like supplies that they get in a large form contract when they buy 10 million vials of morphine and Tylenol and whatever it is that they carry around in the field?
Yes, the federal government is buying pharmaceuticals from J&J. We're talking about J&J.
Sure, that's okay. And now is it?
I think you're really
Johnson & Johnson's
okay.
$85 billion in sales.
Let's
what percentage
AC,
is
what do you consider a military contractor? Just anyone that
anyone who has a
sells
contract
a stick
to
of bubble gum to the government? All of a sudden, you're a defense contractor because I've now sold money and money has now changed hands.
That is, yes. If I sign a contract for whatever services or goods that I provide with the Department of Defense to provide them with goods or services, then I am a military contractor. Yes.
Okay.
That would be my. Sorry, that's not the definition.
Is that the only thing you got on Johnson & Johnson Pharmaceuticals? Anything else? It's a giant corporation. I'm sure you could find something else.
Now, is it the majority of their 80?
They probably sell bandages too. So
yeah,
all right,
I think so.
Let's tack on some more.
Now the question is, well, what percentage of that $85 billion they sold last year is to the Department of Defense? I don't know. Same thing. The same way.
Well, you say it in the air that it's a major part and should kind of like discount the revenue that they made.
I guess my take on it is he was talking about the huge merger where all the defense contractors of the Cold War era merged down into the 5 big ones.
Yeah, they bought each other up. Yeah,
right. And
you could argue that with a lot of these major companies as well.
Yeah, I agreed. But so just because they didn't have 500 contractors that all whittled down to 5 doesn't. But although the spending as a percentage of whatever went down, and that is reasonable on his argument side. Again, my point is Lockheed Martin, like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, like they make other stuff.
That's what I was about to say. You kind of want to count things to this, but not discount everything else.
But I'm using his reference because he was talking about he was making the joke about those calculators that everybody had in high school. Right. Those guys made missiles. They were a defense contractor.
Right.
That was his statement.
Right.
So so his statement is if you do anything. I guess you're right. And if you do,
I think it was more just
if you do anything that includes weapon systems directly, then you're a defense contractor. At minimum, that was his inference. But to me, his inference was if you do
I took
business,
the inference. It was more just like telling people, it was like, hey, you hear about this? They're like, oh, those TI, it's the same company. I thought it was more just trying to like equate the two and just kind of throw a little nugget of knowledge.
It's that
that same company that makes missiles makes your TI-85.
No, and I agree with this point. In that era, it was huge business to get into the defense contracting business. People were trying to figure out any way they could figure out whatever their core business was. If they could spin off something that they could sell to the military, it was worth going down that rabbit hole because you might get that contract and it might be worth doing.
Right.
Now, and I think his point in that argument is that's not the way it works anymore. It's consolidated down, and we only have these 5 major players that make weapon systems.
I did like how he made that point. He was like, "I've been involved in, writing up draft proposals to get contracts." He was like, "It is a pain in the fucking ass."
He says it's a pain, right? He said right, and it probably is at some level. I could see in certain circumstances it kind of loosens up depending on the need and want.
It's with any
from the DoD
kind of draft proposal that if you're working for a corporation and you want more money for your department.
Well, but it's also I think one thing to keep in mind is it depends on who is instigating the conversation. If I'm a person making a thing and I want you to buy it, it's more effort for me to get you to buy from me. Where if you come to me looking for a thing that I do, it's usually a lot less effort for me to get that sale. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if the Department of Defense is going to Lockheed and Raytheon saying, hey, we want a new missile system, they'll write up quotes. They don't have to go through all the grant crazy process. They'll write up, some spec sheets and do a proposal, but they won't have to go through that complicated stuff that he was making fun of, because they're asking to give you money. You're not asking them to give you money.
I think it happens more often in the reverse. And that the companies are trying to develop stuff, and they come to like, hey, we've got this newest thing that does that. And then maybe, obviously, the department or the government's going to come back and be like, I like that, tweak this or whatever.
Sure. But I think
it happens more often than not that, these defense contractors are coming to the U.S. government. I don't think the government
I'm
being
trying
like,
to remember.
Hey, we had a guy that was wondering about,
I think it's Lockheed. Like Lockheed makes the Black Hawk.
Melting lasers. Can you guys figure out something about melting lasers?
I mean, maybe. But I would say, like, Lockheed makes the Black Hawk, I believe. I'm not 100% on who makes it, but I'm pretty sure it's Lockheed Martin. So, post-Vietnam, the Department of Defense went out actively seeking somebody to build the replacement to the Huey. Because Vietnam was the testing ground for helicopters. Helicopters weren't a thing in World War II. Right. They were used very sparingly tail end of Korea, but it was weird and awkward. Nobody knew what it was doing yet. Like, Vietnam was when the helicopter became an active piece of hardware for the military. And so they had all these different helicopters that, that were commissioned and made during Vietnam or whatever. And the Department of Defense went to Lockheed and said, we want a replacement for the Huey. And Lockheed drew up the Black Hawk. I would wager that in that conversation, Lockheed didn't say, hey, we made a new helicopter, check it out. It was the Department of Defense said, we need a new helicopter. That's my point. Whoever instigates the sale whoever's instigating the sale is going to change how the sale happens, is my point. And I think that's normal in every business. If I were, like, especially in government relations business, like if
all right,
if the city of Knoxville puts out a request for bids on a project,
and I would think even in Vietnam that it was pretty apparent to these contractors either the lackingness or the need for, because these people they have their ears to the ground as well. I mean, they know to a relative extent kind of direction that the technology is going. I mean, these are people that are on the forefront of some of that technology.
Right. And I would say that, like, I could see it functioning where some guy who, like my dad, who was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, had he been an engineer instead of a business-minded person, he might have been like, all right, I survived that. I could design a better helicopter.
Yeah.
And then him going through and designing a better helicopter and presenting it to Department of Defense and having to go through a mountain of effort trying to pitch his thing. But inversely, Department of Defense says, hey, we want something to replace this, and my dad had designed one, it'd be a little easier process for him because they're asking for it as opposed to him asking them to add it to their... Because they recognize the need, so they don't need to... Anyway, it doesn't matter.
All right, I think we're getting into the weeds on this. I don't know. I think it happens more so in the
I get the guy
in the opposite, but
I mean I agree. I will acknowledge. I get the premise that he's after, and I definitely see his point in that.
I thought these were some pretty staggering numbers. Like I said, if you add up the 5 top major defense contractors and their total revenue of 2023 is less than one of the tech companies or one of the pharmaceutical companies.
Right. On in the 4 categories given. Boeing in revenue, not earnings, is like 9th on the list. If you sort it into earnings, sorry, do it this way.
I'm glad you know how to use Excel.
So actual profit: Apple, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Johnson & Johnson, Amazon, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Bristol-Myers Squibb, Lockheed. Apple at $97 billion. Lockheed at $7 billion in actual profit.
Yeah, net profit, whatever. That's year-to-year net profit?
No, it's just
that's
everything you brought in minus everything.
Spending versus earnings.
Yeah. And so that's the, I mean, it is, if we could agree to the premise that money is power in politics, then it is likely that Amazon and Apple have more power in the U.S. government than Lockheed Martin does.
Yeah.
But again, that's another assertion in conversation here, is that because you make the most money, well, maybe that's the other way to say it. His inference is that if you're making more money than anybody else, it's because the government's giving it to you. If you're doing government contracts, you're making more money because you're getting it from the government.
Not sure I follow.
Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. His inference at minimum is that if you're the big bad wolf and you have power to tell the government to do whatever you want, and they jump whenever you say jump, then you should be making more money than anybody else does. That's his implication with his statement in this graph.
I can kind of see that, yeah.
And so what he's saying is that if you make more money, you have more power, and Apple has more power than Boeing by that definition.
I kind of took it he was just kind of pushing back against, a thought that I had, that these major companies had just held major sway and were just making buku bucks off the government, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I think
and I was like, shit, they really not making that
I got a
much
guy
money
that I started.
and-
I got a guy that I started following he's a stock market guy, and I'm still trying to figure something. Like his simplified versions are still really complicated.
I really was it like 2 Mondays ago, or the stock market went down? And I was like 3 or 4 days after that, I was like, man, I should have bought a whole bunch of stocks on Monday because I knew it was going to rebound. I knew it was just
everybody knows
it was a
rebound,
quick
right?
thing, yeah. And I was like, fuck, I missed my chance. I could have played the stocks.
So there's a guy who got this guy found some stuff from another guy who did some like deep research, and it's like if you get into some of these like tip top equity firms and stuff like that, and these tip top companies, and you look at their ownership, they all own each other.
A lot of them, yeah.
And so it's like, well, this is the great George Carlin quote. You don't have to. There doesn't have to be an explicit agreement for a conspiracy to take place. Have you seen that interview?
No,
He's doing a roundtable. He's doing a roundtable, and it's like it's George Carlin and some like political talking head. And this is back in the mid late '80s or something like that. And basically like George Carlin, his stand up was very political, and he was very critical of the ruling class and other things like that, and his stand up and stuff like that. And so the conversation's going on about, like somebody, like I think the moderator of this like little round table that they were doing, whatever. It's like, you talk a lot about the ruling class and all this stuff. Are you saying that they are getting together and making decisions, like in the dark smoky room or whatever? He's like no, you don't have to. There doesn't need to be an explicit conversation. They don't need to sit down and shake hands to know what's best for all of them, because they all are intertwined and they all know each other and they all do all these things. And so it doesn't have to be an explicit agreement for it to be a conspiracy for a new end. And so you take that quote and then you wrap it up into this thing where all these giant mortgage companies, like not mortgage companies, but just these giant stock market players are companies that all own each other. So they don't have to go to board meetings and talk to each other about what they're trying to do and how they're trying to manipulate the market to make themselves more money. They all know it's all in their best interest to do X, Y, or Z because they know that's going to make them more money. It's that we were big Carlin fans. I'm still a big fan of his general work.
Oh, love the man.
He was a good critical voice, I suppose, to my youth. Got me hating the government early, but it was a real the way this guy did is he did these these graphs, and there was like a box, and like there was 100 squares in the box. Each square was a % ownership, and so he's like, you take like a big company like J.P. Morgan or whatever, and he's like, it's both color coded and sized, and so he's like, you have internal owners, which is like the actual owners of the company. People that are employees who get stock options as employees and stuff like that, and then retail investors like me and you. And it's like giant company like J.P. Morgan, like 12% of it is is either employees or retail ownership. The other 80-something% is, but then that other 80% is all these little blocks of BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, blah, 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 like all these different big company names that you know. It's like, okay, that's kind of crazy, but whatever. But then you go look at BlackRock, and it's like 18% either retail or employee owned. And then the other 70-80% is JP Morgan. So like JP Morgan owns like 30% of BlackRock, and BlackRock owns 30% of JP Morgan. And then you go you keep spiraling this thing down, and you get into this giant graph where the retail percentage keeps dropping over time as you do these, just because of the way it works. And so it gets to this thing where it's like 3% of the stock market.
Can a company entity own stocks in another entity?
Uh-huh. That is all Berkshire Hathaway is. All his funds are funds of other companies' stocks.
I guess that's their investment portfolio or whatever.
And so, like, he takes these cube graph things that he does, and you could pile them all up, and then he turns it into grayscale. And so it's like white is corporate ownership, being other companies own it. Gray is that other funds and stuff own pieces of it. White is retail ownership, and then black is like the top 5 companies, and like you span this whole thing out, and it's like 90% black.
Yeah.
And so like no matter which company you pick out of here, like 90% of that company is owned by a combination of 4 other companies, and they're all the same 4 or 5 companies. It's really like I'm doing a terrible job explaining it, but suffice to say that if you're one of the, if you're the CEO or the board of directors of one of those 5 companies, you have a whole fucking lot of power, at least over the economy, which I would assume rolls into the government as well. I think we should just abolish the stock market, if you want to get down to me, or at least abolish any legal protections for any parts or pieces and anybody in play. That is a Wild West. That is straight up Vegas. You guys do whatever the fuck you want, but don't come to me.
I've always called it rich man's gambling.
Yeah, don't come to me when the other guy screws you over or something happens that you don't like. You all do what you want over there. You want to give him $50 and on the promise he's going to give you $500 tomorrow. If he doesn't bring you that $500, don't come to me. That's your bet. You take your bets and you take your losses.
But I get the basic concept of it. I guess of like how it all kind of started was essentially you had a company that needed to have money, and you're essentially trying to sell a stake in that company. I kind of get it from that basic standpoint.
Right, but then...
hey, I don't quite have enough money for myself to survive.
Well, but that's not even...
you buy a piece
that's
of
not the
it.
stock market, though. That's the preamble to the stock market.
That's what I'm talking about, is the kind of the precursor to it, kind of how it started.
But I'm saying, the stock market as it exists is, or at least as the real stock market as an exchange place where you actually went and did it is... Okay, you started a company, you needed some help. You don't have the money. You sold shares in your company to your friends and neighbors. Now, the actual stock market is your friends and neighbors selling the shares of your company to other people. Or you. It's not that original sale. That's a later development in the stock market. The original sale is more of just a general business agreement between you and these people that have invested in you. It's those people taking the investment that they gave you and the paperwork for that investment and selling it to other people.
Not necessarily.
It's exactly what the stock market is.
It could be as simple as of just that 2-person transaction of me buying it back from them later. It doesn't require a third party.
But you don't.
It can simply be me buying those shares back. But like, I needed money at the time. Now I have enough to 100% own it. I'm going to buy that share back from you.
But
it's going to cost me.
You don't need a public exchange to buy back your shares from somebody who invested in your company.
No.
The public exchange part is when you get into this third. The only reason the public exchange part exists because we get into this third party game.
Right.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah, you start a company. You say, "Hey, I want to start this company. I'll sell you 20% of my company."
It started as that B person in the equation there, just deciding they didn't want it. Period, and they see a value in it that they think is a value to someone else.
Yes.
They're like, hey, I can't sell it back to this person. I want to sell it to somebody else.
Right. This is cool. This is a cool company. This is a cool company. I gave him $1,000 to start his company. I got one share of his company for $1,000. He is not in the position to buy that share back from me yet. I need the $1,000 back because I have something else that I need to buy.
Right.
do you, other third-party random person, want to buy this share from me for $1,200 because I think it's worth that?
Right.
That's the stock market simply. Nowadays, we have all these derivatives and weird craziness that goes on. That's you're buying, like we were talking about shorts a couple weeks ago. You're borrowing a stock and then selling it and then buying it back later and giving it back to who you borrowed it from.
There was a whole big thing during the financial crisis of little investment firms betting against their bets, like hedge fund managers hedging their bets.
Yeah. It's a mess.
They're like, hey, we're pretty sure this is going to fail, so we're going to put a big, huge like insurance policy because we're pretty sure this is going to fail.
Right. And then we get an insurance, which is a whole other scam.
Yeah.
But
what else you got?
I don't know. We had a bunch of stuff back and forth in our text thing this week. Yeah. That one's for later. Our boy Phil Williams out of Nashville, the monster reporter that he is, apparently got some death threats from some little neo-Nazi out of South Carolina? North Carolina.
I'm not sure where the organization is actually based out of.
I have questions. I have lots of questions. I have lots of interest in this one. I'd like to rattle off. Is the phrase "or else" a death threat?
It can be construed, and
I'm just thinking
it's in the eyes of the law. It really comes down to the perception of the victim themselves. Did they truly feel threatened? Did they feel that their life was in danger?
Ooh, there's some fun stuff in there. So
I mean, that's the whole stand your ground law.
Sure,
you can literally shoot someone.
That's literally what I was about to say. I was like, so Phil Williams could have shot this guy if he saw him on the street because he felt threatened.
Not exactly. There's a more immediate threat to it. He couldn't be like, oh, well, he couldn't go track this person down and been like, well, I had to go kill him first because he said or else.
All right, so ridiculous.
Like that would not be a valid.
Ridiculous legal question. We need a lawyer. If I was going to say, do this or one day you're going to die, is that a threat? Is that me threatening your life?
Possibly, yeah.
Because, I mean, one day you are going to die.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's by my hand.
That is true. But did I perceive that threat? And did I take it?
Right. So, like, there's a lot of First Amendment. There's a whole bunch of First Amendment stuff in this story. Okay, I apologize. We got ahead of ourselves here. Mr. Phil Williams, Nashville Channel 5 News, did a story. A white supremacist warned me to comply with his demands or else. Now he's in federal custody. This dude, I don't know. I don't even want to try to say that name. I don't really care. Nashville, Tennessee. He warned me, Phil Williams. Phil Williams? Phil Williams.
Yeah.
I always get, every time I say his name, I think about our Phil Williams here with his fat nose and the dog.
Different guy.
Anyway, Phil Williams, Nashville, Tennessee. He warned me that there would be consequences if I failed to comply with his demands to air a white supremacist video. Then nothing happened. Today, hate group researchers said that they have identified the man behind the social media app, so an entire app that targeted him, which I have some questions about that, and others in Middle Tennessee who he perceived were standing in Gabriel Henson's path last fall to become the mayor of Franklin. Now he faces his own consequences. This guy, Nix, who's 20, who is active duty in Fayetteville, North Carolina, is now in federal custody. He's charged with unlawful firearms trafficking for selling 2 stolen guns and accused of lying about his hate group ties on his U.S. Army background check. Not a very good job actually doing the background check. It's usually a background check is more than asking questions, especially military ones. It depends what he's doing and what level of security clearance he's trying to get. But usually you don't say, hey, are you a Nazi? And they say, no, I'm not a Nazi. Oh, okay, cool. They usually would put some effort into double-checking that if they felt they needed to ask the question.
Well, I mean, it's not like they have an online role that's posted online that the Army could cross-reference. Like, oh, are you on that list of active members?
Yeah, but I would say
most of these hate groups are borderline underground.
I would think the FBI or the cyber part of the law center, as best they can, have a version of that role of all these different hate groups if they're going to bother.
This is the Army on an enlistment form.
Anyway, doesn't matter. That was a throwaway. I didn't mean to make that a thing.
Okay.
This guy Nix was a recruiter for Patriot Front in and around North Carolina. Said Jeff. I'm not going to try to say his last name. A senior researcher with the Southern Poverty Law Center, referring to a white supremacist organization known for its khaki pants and hate-filled flyers. What a combo. Carrying around your hate-filled flyers in your khaki pants.
With extra big cargo pockets.
I was required with my previous job to wear khaki pants. Are they part of the Patriot Front?
Fucking Christ.
Ha, 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 ha. Thank you.
Ha ha, it's a great joke. Ha ha, ha, ha.
It's a stupid joke.
Yeah, I agree. It was a very stupid joke.
I mean, how do you get known for wearing khaki pants? Like, how does that become a thing? Like, that's a requirement of the thing. So now khaki pants is all khaki. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I mean, it's something that they self-ascribe to themselves. I mean, you had the Proud Boys that had that weird, like, black polo with gold lines or whatever that, for whatever reason, they decided like that was their uniform.
But that's at least like a distinctly unique subset of a shirt. Like, it's not just a shirt. It's not a black shirt. It's a black shirt with yellow striping in certain spots.
Right.
Like, it's actually like, anyway, doesn't matter.
I agree. Yes, the term khaki pants is very vague, but
anyway,
it's something that apparently that they like to traditionally dress up in. They don't wear blue jeans. They prefer just khaki. So yes, it's a valid statement.
Our friend Jeff said that Nick was we found Nick operating a channel called Appalachian Archives, which was later rebranded to American Archives, and it was a Telegram channel that was rife with neo-Nazi content. The Southern Poverty Law Center, which investigates hate groups, became especially interested in those channels after they began to play a role in Hanson's future bid for mayor in the county seat of Williamson County in Tennessee. I mean, like, that's a group of hateful dudes. I know that because they're... Anyway, I'm not going to go back down there. I'm sorry. Have a little fun with it, buddy. Jesus.
Well, make it funny. Jesus.
Jeff, quote from Jeff, essentially, Kai was working behind the scenes, doxing people, providing sensitive material about journalists, about activists that were engaged in trying to stop Hanson's campaign. Apparently, this Hanson guy was running for mayor of whatever, Franklin. Among its posts, Appalachian Archive shared a photo of the home and address of Franklin attorney who had criticized the hate groups, as well as info about the operator of the progressive Tennessee Holler news site, and photos from a neo-Nazi protest outside the home of journalists from a national website he had covered in the Hanson's campaign. There were protesters set up signs declaring freedom of press is not freedom of consequence. Then there were accounts attacks against me, Phil. Phil, this guy is the one targeting you, said Jeff. In particular, Appalachian Archives demanded that I post a video that a local neo-Nazi leader had recorded with a member of Hanson's campaign. If Phil Williams thinks he can run a slander campaign without showing uncensored truth of what happened, he is mistaken. It continued, if Phil Williams does not comply with the following, more drops will come, suggesting that if we continue to share personal information of people in the community. This is our only warning, it concluded, adding the tagline, always watching, always listening, always near. TikTok. It takes a lot to shock me, in particular in the world of checking on neo-Nazis, but that's something that was truly shocking to see. The goal is to cause havoc as they wish to do some shit. I don't know. The problem I had, so he's got kicked out of the Army. He's now in jail. It's pretty crazy. Yes. Like, the doxing thing's rude. And I think for most...
Rude? That's it?
Is it illegal?
Yes.
Is it?
I think forms of it, yes, are now considered. Yeah.
Okay. It's a real question. Like, I don't mean...
It didn't sound like it was a real question.
I think it's odd if it is. I think it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, if I were to tell somebody your address, that's doxing you, essentially.
I think there's a little bit more to it. I think there is kind of like an illusion of directing people as well. It's like giving the address and the implication also encouraging people to go there for whatever means.
Right, but I think the whatever means is the major part is a major criminal part in my understanding. If I said, "Hey, go to this address and hurt this person,"
right?
Okay, but okay, maybe I don't know what the definition of doxing is. So I always thought
I'm not 100% sure.
I always understood doxing to mean that you were posting.
I want to say that the laws are trying to catch up to it.
It's usually an online thing where you're telling Facebook where somebody lives. Like, you're telling...
It's not specifically just releasing the address. It's like it's releasing the address in an effort...
Or personal information of a private personal information that shouldn't be necessarily public, that the individual has some right to privacy on. Because, I mean, your address is public record anyway, so it's not like if you had any effort... If I know your name, I can find out where you live.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Generally speaking.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know. I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy for a lot of things. I'm curious what their unedited video was, because their argument, at least their implication in the argument is, Phil, show this video or else.
I don't know. Because one of them, I don't know if that was the one he was talking about. I guess was one of their people's interview with the candidate.
Right.
I think it was one of the videos. They
and
wanted.
So, like,
it sounded like they had more videos.
Right. At least their implied argument was that the whatever story you ran on our guy was biased and one-sided. Here is a alternate view of this guy. And if you're going to air that one, then you have to air this one, which they have they have the right to ask him to all they want, but he has no obligation to do so.
Right.
And under threat is problematic. But under threat, I have a little bit of concern over
problematic.
I have a little bit of
term.
I have a little bit of concern on what constitutes a threat. Yes, it's problematic in the sense that, okay, do it or I'll fucking kill you. That's a threat. That's a threat.
No, that's problematic.
But no, that's my point. I use the word problematic intentionally because do it or else. I don't know that I would agree that that's a threat. An actionable threat. It's a threat, yes, absolutely. But an actionable threat that's a criminal actionable threat, I feel like there's the First Amendment kind of needs to take some precedence here. That, it's not illegal to be an asshole. It sucks and it's not great for everybody, but it's not illegal.
Right.
I've cut a guy off in traffic and you fucking asshole, I'm going to kill you. I didn't think for a second that I should report that to the police because he continued going the other direction and wasn't following me. But had he followed me, okay, that's a little bit different story. And so that's where I get a little wishy-washy on this. That's where I use the term problematic because it's such a fucking soft-ass term. It's a shitty term. I don't disagree with you. It's a shitty term because it's trying to...
Yeah, it was just the way you phrased it, that someone getting threatened, that's problematic. And I'm like, no, that's beyond problematic.
I don't know if it is. That's I think that's like problematic is it sucks. It's gross. I don't like it. I wish it didn't happen. But to say that it's criminal, that you should go to jail because you threatened somebody, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I agree with that. I think the threat needs to be explicit and the means need to be evident and actionable.
Okay, so what's your line of when a threat is not actionable, is not a crime? When does that threat become...
Okay, I'm going to stab you right now. I have a knife in my hand.
Right.
Is there a threat here? Is that actionable? Do you feel threatened?
With you holding a knife, literally saying, I'm going to stab you.
Like literally, it's happening in this moment.
Right.
Do you feel threatened right now?
No.
Okay. But... like in the context mattering, it would like in other situations. Yes,
exactly.
I could see that as an
matters. This is someone they don't know who obviously received more than one threat. This wasn't just like a one-off. Like, oh, I got one letter from this guy.
I mean,
I'm going to go to the police.
I could see a harassment thing. Yeah, okay. I could see a harassment. Like it'd be an harassment charge, maybe.
I'm saying, but. I mean, more to the fact that, like, he took this as a threat, as to, like, I don't think this was just a one-off letter that got sent to him. Like, this was multiple things to where I can absolutely see in this person's mind, like, this was a threat. I'm getting more than one letters that are saying these things to me.
I mean, I thought it was saying it was all, like, he was tagged in posts. Like, at least the ones they referenced were, yeah, they tagged him and said, hey, at you.
I mean, I've never heard those phrases, but if someone told me they're always watching, always listening, always close, I would most certainly take that as threatening. What the fuck is that supposed to mean?
I would feel threatened by that as well.
Okay,
and I would do all that I could to ensure my own safety. But there's a very fine, fuzzy, uncolored line that I don't know how to describe in putting people in a box because they said something. I have a hard time with that. It's problematic to me.
making threats isn't automatic jail time anyway. So I don't know why you're going to throw me in a box. No, that's not how it works. I would say probably at least get a restraining order that forbids him from contacting him whatsoever.
Right, and then violation of a state order would be actionable on the state side. That makes sense. I don't know. Maybe
you automatically jump to like, "We're going to throw me in a box."
Maybe Mr. Phil
people that call handcuff like torture cuffs.
Maybe he did put a restraining order out, and he served him with hey, don't talk to me, don't contact me ever again, and if you do, I'm reporting it to the police, and you're going to jail.
Maybe I don't know. I don't think it mentions it in the story. I'm assuming he would have done that.
I didn't see that either, and I would assume
maybe he hoped that this would be the end of it. Yeah. It's like, you know what, motherfucker?
Hey, gangster move right in the story about yourself like that. I have mad respect for
Did he write the story?
Yeah.
I did. Okay.
The headline was me. It was like threatened me.
I didn't know if it was actually.
Yeah.
If you were in conjunction with somebody else.
It's good. Good work, Phil. I think Phil does good work. I think. Have
you read his other stories?
Yeah, he's done a bunch of stuff. Like he gets deep and dirty on a lot of stuff. Like he's in Nashville. He's very active in the state houses and stuff like that.
Was he the one that got to sit down with Randy McNally and made that motherfucker sweat under the lights?
Maybe. I don't know. He's done some good journalism on a number of governmental topics.
Yeah.
And again, like I don't. This isn't a fault, but he has a bias, and I have no problems with him having said bias. But he definitely has a bias. He does not like the state legislature the way it is, and he is actively headhunting for exposing some of the ridiculousness that they're doing. And I have no problem with that. Partially because I agree with him on a lot of the stuff that he's exposing that they're doing, which is gross. But partially because I think that's good journalism.
Yeah.
And there's biased journalists on all different directions, and just because they have a bias, as long as they're honest about it, doesn't make their journalism bad. As long as they don't pretend like they're unbiased and say that they don't care, they're just seeking the facts. No, I'm seeking this one out because I think it's gross. Like okay, I probably shouldn't say this. It might cause me my contract.
Stop you now.
No, I'm good with it.
Okay.
I'll take my chances.
All right, let's go.
I think that. Okay, well, actually, you know what? I'll leave it. I'll go at it a little sideways. It's clear enough anyway. State law, one of the fun state laws that got passed, is public schools are obligated. Public school administrators are obligated to notify parents if their students are requesting to be called by a different gendered name and or pronoun. That is state law in Tennessee. Went into effect this year. Knox County Schools has started the process where they are documenting and calling parents. So Sam's not very good example because Sam is a gender neutral name, short for Samuel or Samantha. So that would be a little bit less functional in the thing. But if your name was Samuel and you said, call me Sam, they're not going to say anything. But if you say, my name is William, I want you to call me Susie, they're obliged to notify your parents. If your name is William and you are a boy, quote unquote, and you say, I would like to go by she, her, they are obliged to contact your parents.
Okay.
No real guidance in any of that, or how it works, or what to do in the situation. You just have to call their parents and tell them. Which, there's some problems here. I'm like, I mean, it's truly a shit. Like, it's like, I don't know. I'm the parent supremacist in this conversation, generally speaking. But I'm also not a shitbag parent, so I could see how there could be issues where if you have a child who is hiding their true self and the only place they feel remotely comfortable is in the classroom or at school, and they try to act as themselves in the classroom, in the school, and then that goes home to their abusive parents who...
I think I argued this point when we talked about this like a couple months ago.
I didn't remember this one coming on in the books until this week, but what about it?
No, I think I made that same point, that I don't agree with it. It's more and more states are starting to do it, I think. I don't know how many. I know of at least a few other states have put this on the books. I don't agree with the requirement.
I think Jesse made a very good point from there's an activist group that's trying to fight this and this, that, and the other. And this activist that he did an interview with that made a really good point is this effectively makes a register for trans kids in the state of Tennessee.
All right.
That's fucking gross. Now, notifying the parents, we can argue about that and whether that's good or bad. I have my feelings on that. But having an act like the idea, that scares me. And not just for the trans part of it, just the idea that there's
documentation, basically.
Right. That active registry, like the idea of just like of any subset of any subculture, whatever we want to call it, and again, not necessarily like trans is the issue of du jour. This is what the state's all fucking up in arms about right now. But the idea that the state has the ability to start on kids an active registry of anything. We could, I can't think of another example off the top of my head, but I don't like the idea of them making an active registry on anything. That concerns me. Again,
I don't see the point in the requiring. I mean, if it's something that's actually causing disruptions in the classroom that, the teacher feels the need, like, where the kid, I don't know, is changing their name like every other week. Like, hey, I want to be called this. 2 weeks later, I want to be called that. 2 weeks later, I want to be called this. Then maybe yes. I might talk to the parents and be like...
Right, because this isn't... Right, it's not a trans issue. It's your kid's just playing this game because they can, because this thing exists.
Not necessarily that. But I mean, it was just a weird example. But
no,
something that's actually...
That's one of the examples that a lot of people have used in the general anti-trans argument.
But I mean, if it's something that's disrupting the classroom or hindering the child's education... then that's reason to sit down and talk to the parents about, something that's affecting the child's education.
Right.
But outside of that, if it's not affecting the classroom, you just teach.
I mean, personally, I would like to know because I would feel terrible that my kid didn't feel comfortable coming to and telling me.
Right.
I would like to know because I would like to breach that subject with them and support them and try to figure out how to help them, however is the right way to help them in that.
Right. And
I do think it's ridiculous. It adds to that fucking
hindsight,
list.
As a teacher that came to me, I would just encourage that student to talk to the parents. I wouldn't, and I don't think it's right that the teacher should be the one to break that news to the parents.
Well, it's not the teacher; it's the admin. But the school, like the teacher themselves,
that makes it even worse.
The teacher has to report it to
the principal. Who has more connection with the parents, the teacher or the administrators?
Oh,
I mean, the teacher should have at least one step closer to the parents.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, maybe they met them on teacher parent night or whatever. Teacher parent night.
I met all mine this week.
Right.
But it's like handshake. It's like I don't.
It's just adding one more requirement. Just
right. I certainly take issue with that part 100%. Our teachers have enough shit to do. They don't need to be policing names.
I mean, I'd be curious to go back and kind of watch the debates upon it and see kind of reasoning behind it. I'm sure it's in like the education subcommittee. Is Massey's in the education subcommittee, isn't she?
I don't remember. She's the head. She's the chair of the transportation.
Transportation. I don't think
she's in a couple. Like she's in a couple.
Right.
They're all of them are in more than one.
Right.
But she's the chair of this transportation.
I don't think she's on education. I know Lumberg's. I think he's the chair of education.
I mean, it's not whatever. It's all Republicans, and they're sitting there going, How can we hate on trans?
Curious to see like their logic behind it or whatever, their argument behind it.
I would bet you that there was not a lot of discussion on this one.
Possibly.
I would bet you it was written out and it was probably framed in a parent's right to know, which I'm a little bit open to that argument.
Right.
That parents have a right to know what's going on with their kids in the schools, and voila. I would assume that's about how it broke down.
I'd be curious to see, the other side of the aisle when they ask that lovely question of like, who asked you to bring this bill? Like, where did this bill come from?
I bet you it didn't. I bet you there was no discussion.
Right.
I bet you there's
I'm sure it was like a Moms for Liberty thing.
There are probably 0 Democrats in the subcommittee, or like 1, and it's the one that has been beaten down so hard that he doesn't even pretend to try to push back on anything. Or when he raises his hand, they don't call on him. That's not common amongst these people.
Yeah. And
it went through subcommittee with very little discussion and went on the floor with no discussion, and that was that. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's interesting. It's crazy. I don't
see it causing a huge issue. Like, I don't think there were that many kids that, were just one person in school and they were totally different at home. I'm sure there were some, but I would say that's much less the minority. Not that we, shouldn't try to look after, those on the minority side of any kind of issue, but
I would say it's number one, the percentage of trans kids in Tennessee schools, period, is minuscule.
Right.
And then you multiply, or then you divide that by the number of trans kids in Tennessee schools who are not already out with their parents, which I would say is maybe a 50-50 split. I'd say it's probably 50-50. Some aren't out yet because they're not sure. They don't know. It's just they're trying things on, and that's part of being a kid. And to kind of force that issue upon them en masse with their parents and stuff like that is a little inappropriate if they're trying to figure that out for themselves at the time. Like, I'm going to go buy Susan this year. I feel like this is right, but I don't know. Let's give it a go. I feel like that's probably a very simplistic interpretation of the mindset of a kid going through some of this shit. But
I just had the thought, like, I find it kind of hard to believe that, a student's going to have that much trouble talking about that to their parents, but in a classroom of at least, 25 to 30 other peers, they feel comfortable being like, oh, hey. I mean, where at least, some of those kids know them from previous classes or previous years.
But I don't know. I mean,
middle school. All of a sudden, they want to out themselves to at least that classroom to essentially a good bit of the rest of the schools.
Right. Which
I find that hard to believe, that they're going to be that open to have everyone else in their class know, where they're more likely to get ridiculed versus keeping it under wraps at home.
See, I don't know if I agree with I don't know that I agree that they're more likely to get ridiculed. It depends what level of school and stuff like that, but I think.
I mean, it's more acceptable, but it's still unacceptable in culture for the most part.
I don't think that. I don't
for
think
the most part. It's becoming more acceptable, but there's still a lot of pushback on it.
I think backwards. I think in a reverse age demographic, yes. The older you get, the more the pushback is, and the younger you get, the less the pushback there is.
Maybe.
I would say that there is a level in. I would say in pop culture at large, there is a ton of acceptance and beyond acceptance into like glorification on some levels.
I don't get the whole. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I think that there is some glorification and not necessarily in like an intentional malice sort of way, in that, but in a way that's like overcorrection for historically not being receptive to the idea. Like I think the pop culture is like that's amazing. I'm so happy for you. Like instead of it just kind of being like, well, okay, whatever. It's like a whoa, yeah. Instead of a okay, who cares, whatever. Because the old version was and so the overcorrection is yeah. And so I think that there is like some cultural cachet to coming out in some of these different subcultures, for lack of a better word.
I think to some extent there's some small, I hate to call it like overreactions, but I think there's a little bit of there finally is some acceptance, and some people finally feeling okay and being like, yes, we are. Like you have to recognize this.
All right, I will acknowledge
as a group.
Right, I will acknowledge
instead of just everyone just being like you're not a part of this community. We don't want to see you. Right. We don't want to hear anything about 100%.
You. And the overcorrection,
you are less than a person. Like you're going to hell. You're doing this and that.
Right, and the attempt to the apology, the way to apologize is to overcorrect.
Really, apologize. It's
to own your past mistakes, whatever. Like, okay, so not to imply that my nephew, who is
a little bit of like fuck you, like I am a part of this society.
So my 17-year-old nephew, not that he is a statistician by any stretch, I asked him at family vacation. I was like, how many LGBTQ kids do you go to school with? And I was like, he's like, I don't know, like a couple hundred or so. I was like, let me ask it in a different way. like a percentage of your because he's a junior going into a senior. He just started his senior year this last week or two. Yeah. I was like, of your junior class, like what percentage? 25%, 30%. He's like 45, 50%. I asked his mom about it, my sister. She was like, there's no fucking way.
Yeah.
But from his perspective, there was a lot of juniors in a Colorado high school. They're in Colorado.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, that's a lot. Like, that seems like a bit of an overcorrection to me. I personally don't believe that the percentage of people who are actually trans versus the people who are playing with the idea of being trans is the same number. And I think with
that
kids,
was his perception. It might have been of like, they dress a little funny, like they might be bi.
Right, yeah, absolutely. But I think, I 100% believe that there's a real number. I 100% believe that there's a real number, not of just trans, but of gay and lesbian and bi and non-binary and all the different letters. But I think it is more than I think that it's more than I don't like to use the word I'm about to use, but I think it's more than is naturally occurring because I think there is cultural cachet in it. And I think that there is social cachet, maybe a better way to put it, in the high school format. And kids are susceptible to kind of leaning into things that may or may not be them. Like, everybody was or knows somebody that they went to school with when they were in high school who acted a way that they were not because they were trying to be something they were not because that was part of their attempt at surviving high school.
Yeah.
And I would argue that there are a goodly sum of kids who are acting or trying to be something they're not because there is some they see it as some positive. Whether it's true or not, they see some positive personal aspect to it. Like I tried really hard to be. I don't really see it. You witnessed it with me. I tried really hard to be a stoner when we were in high school, and it was miserable.
Yeah, you didn't try that hard.
I did. I tried really hard. I wanted to be so badly.
I didn't.
My body just said no. But my body keeps telling me no. But it was I disagree. I think this is a terrible thing that the state has obliged upon our school system. I think it's a terrible addition to the fucking mountain shit that our principals and teachers have to deal with in the first place. Just on that aspect, it's terrible. I think it's sad. I think it's terrible that there are children that are out there that are scared of being honest with who they are to their parents. I think that is a problem in and of itself. And I don't know what the proper solution to that is, but the state jumping in and forcing issues inside a household doesn't seem like one that I really want to be associated with. That I don't.
Maybe we'll get lucky and there'll be enough pushback to overturn it, but.
We need a vote. I mean, it's like, I was telling the missus about this, and she's like, "How does this happen?" I was like, "Because you don't vote." I mean, that's. I mean, you want to get right down to it. Like nobody wants this shit. The problem is that where is this in your priority list? Like I'd make this argument all the fucking time. Where are trans issues in your priority list when you're going to the ballot box? I'm sorry. Let me back up. Where are trans issues in your priority list to survive tomorrow? Yeah. Like realistically,
Tim's Wall's big thing recently is kind of doing that thing. Like who's asking you to like vote for these crazy things? Like who's asking you for all this crazy stuff that they're pushing for, and pushing back against some of the GOP? What? I don't know what you're pointing at. You're like,
I wasn't. I looked up and Kamala was on my screen. I didn't ask for that.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were trying to point out something to me.
I was freaking out. It's just Kamala or AP supports Kamala Harris. Everybody.
You heard me say Walls.
Yeah, I mean,
AP doesn't support them. AP stays out of the race.
AP takes their party money. Absolutely.
Yes, they're paid for ads. Yes.
Yes. Their campaign gives them money, and they put the ad up.
Right.
Anyway. Fuck! I lost it. Yeah, I mean, like that's like that. So we were talking, we were chatting back and forth earlier this week. The Jennifer Owens sitting down, and we're going to run down the fucking the 2023-24 legislative session in the state of Tennessee and all 2,000 fucking bills that were passed,
right?
And discuss whether that is something that is worthwhile to even have a second of discussion on. And and again, I think your point, I think your accidental point that you were making is like, I'd be
probably tell her to like cut it down.
I'd be interested, like, no, but you said it right, no, because I think the important ones, for the conversation's sake, are the ones that that any normal person would cut out of the conversation. I think those are the ones I want to talk about. Like, make your list, make the full list, and then weed out the ones that have that are mundane, and then the ones that are that have more guts to them. And then let's go through the mundane list. Because this is what these people occupy their fucking time with. All of it. And it's like, well, that's because I think that's my argument. That's been my tease the whole time, is I think if we go through that mundane stuff and go, wait a minute.
I mean, some of the mundane stuff, like I think I remember seeing something about, I think it had to do with one of our surrounding counties. And I guess it goes through like the Department of Agriculture, but it had to do with like certain space or footage around like a cattle operation. Like if you were going to have a slaughterhouse, like how much space you had to have away from the road or away from other residential or other commercial properties, or certain distance away from a river. And I think they were just trying to like extend that out to add another butchering facility. I want to say it was a couple of years ago when there was a whole big thing about meat processing facilities still being shut down due to COVID. We really needed this meat processing area, but it just so happened to be like really close to like another legislator's like house or whatever, or in their district or something like that. Right. So is that a little bit of funny business with it, but that was a mundane thing to where it was basically trying to change the state laws or the agricultural laws to go from like 40 feet to 50 feet. Okay, but that was something that's on the books. It's a state statute or whatever. Okay,
and again, we could take a couple different avenues with that conversation.
That's where some of the mundane stuff.
Did the original law make sense at the time? Is it something that, like, why would the change of time need to change the law? There's questions in that for me. There's, was this, like you said, was this something more? This is something that was like more a particular person's personal effect and how important they were to some legislator or something like that. Yeah, like those are all questions that I have in these conversations, and more importantly, and I think number one, and I think my general argument for the entire conversation, which you will hate every minute of, will be me going, how does that do shit for me and you? What does that change for me and you? Okay, for that particular person there, okay, sure. Now, is that something that the state should have control over? That's a separate conversation.
I guess it depends on how far you want to extend the definition of you. I mean, me and you as in like me and a very person standing across you, or me and you as in you, everyone else.
Well, Tennesseans, I mean, if it's Tennessee stuff, I think the me would be Tennesseans, period. And if it's like, well, this is something that only affects 7 Tennesseans, really? I think that's a waste of fucking time.
Right.
We've got stuff that's, I mean, and again, I mean, that's that'd be number 1A of my argument against the stupid trans thing we were just talking about. Who does this affect? You're spending mountains of energy and effort going through this thing, and you're going to make this you're campaigning on it and all this different bullshit. Like millions of dollars are being spent on campaigns because of trans issues, and there's like 2% of Tennesseans, if that. It doesn't affect anybody. How does it affect anybody?
Just ask your friend on the lobbying group if they had any play in it. Like, did you guys do this?
The only lobby guy I know would be like philosophically wholly opposed to that. Oh, that other friend. Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember the organization he was with. But I
mean, the For All Tennessee guys?
Yeah, the For All Tennessee.
Yeah. No, there's no way. They're libertarian. They were libertarians first.
Yeah, it's probably not.
And so they're not going to give a shit about. They're going to be pretty anti anything the state doing about what you do with your life personally.
Yeah.
I would think. I mean, the way they do their thing, which is pretty cool. It's like they put up a list, and then they put up a time period where their paid members enter ideas, and then they whittle that down, and then they they do a voting session with their paid membership.
Hey, this is what we're going to focus on this
which
year.
issues we're going to focus on. I do need to follow up with them. I haven't talked to them in a good minute.
Yeah.
I'd be curious. I know one of them moved, and he's now a Democrat, which is real weird. But most libertarians end up going Republican long term, just because they get tired of being that other third party gross thing. And if I gotta pick one, I'm gonna pick the one that at least pretends and says it's kind of about individualness, not the one that's about socialistness. That is the norm of like most, like if you talk to like political dork pundits, if you call yourself a libertarian to them, they're going to say, "Oh, you're a Republican," because most of yours most libertarians, in my understanding of it, they agree with Democrats on social issues. Like abortion's a weird one, but like most of the social stuff, like any of like the equal rights kind of things and stuff like that, it's like, yeah. Just leave me alone. Leave them alone. Let them do what they want to do. Let me do what I want to do. We're all cool. As far as like all that stuff, but when it gets into the economics, financial side, they're usually more in line with Republicans. And my argument being that most people, at the end of the day, economics is number 1A for them. If you're a libertarian, but you're dealing with the world that you have to fucking live in, and economics is your most important thing, you're going to side with Republicans more often than Democrats.
Yeah, so I gave the funny look as you said socialist. And I was like, what?
That was a very gross oversimplification, yes. But Democrats do believe in social engineering and doing things as a community, and tax more
social engineering.
Yeah, tax more to spread the wealth, for lack of a better word. That's a very core Democratic value. They want more community things. They want the community to tend to more issues. I think that's a fairly left-leaning. That's a fairly standard liberal ideal. Yeah. I guess
in this, especially in the heated climate, socialist takes a very poor connotation.
I mean, I think but the reason it works is that it's not.
I've seen some funny critiques of.
It's not wholly inaccurate. Is why it sticks.
Even like intellectuals when going after Trump when he tries to label Kamala as a socialist, Marxist,
communist Kamala.
Socialist. Marxist, communist.
Kamala the communist.
It's like, actually, those are very different things. So you can't say that she is like one and all.
Yeah, you generally those two.
Like, you're a communist, fascist. Like, those are two wholly different things.
Yeah, it gets whatever the worst thing is that you can think of. That's who she is.
Right, whatever sticks. I'm gonna throw some spaghetti at the wall. Whatever you guys like.
Communist Kamala. Kamala the communist.
How's that sound?
All right.
Since funny clips of him like crowds, or what's the word for? Crowdsourcing?
Doing some crowd work.
Crowd work, yeah. Basically doing like crowd work. Like, what do you guys, wait a minute, it's like, Lion Kamala, what do you guys think?
How do you feel about?
Okay, how do you like this one? Communist Kamala, how do you guys like that? You like that one? Give me some cheers. Okay.
Sleepy Joe, what do you think?
How about this one? You like that one?
Yeah.
What works best?
I mean, that's what whatever.
It's weird, yeah. All right, sorry.
That's how he does this. That's how he works. I don't know what to say.
That's how you campaign.
All right, I saved this one for you. I got it on the big screen if you want to do it.
Yeah, I was actually wondering if this one was going to show up in the News of the Weird.
Oh, it wasn't in the News of the Weird? You just
I was just starting to look. I saw this one yesterday, but then I remember thinking, like, I wonder if they're actually going to, categorize this in their oddities or whatever.
All right, would you like to go with this one, or you want to pick
Go
it?
ahead.
You shared it.
Okay.
You're the News of the Weird guy.
I mean, you can't help sometimes. You helped me once.
I know.
You. I think you did all of them once.
Yeah, because you didn't have your phone died or something, and I had to pull it up.
Is that what it was?
Something like that.
Yeah, okay.
You didn't have your phone, or your phone died.
That's right. Yeah, I left my phone at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway.
Yeah. German Warship blasts Darth Vader anthem in heart of London. No deeper message, Navy says.
All right. First and foremost, right off the headline, it's called the Imperial March. It's not the Darth Vader theme. It's the Imperial March. Dun, 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 dun. That is the Imperial March.
But everyone knows it.
Fact check your shit, AP. Come on.
Everyone knows it as the Darth Vader.
It is not the Darth Vader thing. It's the Imperial March.
It's the one theme that everyone associates with Darth Vader when he initially comes out and is walking down.
I take exception right off the bat.
I can appreciate your specificity.
I am a little bit of a Star Wars dork. Look around the fucking room. I've got Star Wars shit all over this fucking place right now.
I can't remember. No, did they? I was about to say, I wonder if they actually like mentioned the true thing of it. Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
All right, continuing. Tell me more.
Yeah. And I guess they were resupplying. I didn't. I mean, I knew that the Thames was deep enough. I would never have thought of warships kind of coming up the Thames. But in London, they got some video of this giant like battleship.
Oh, yeah. It's a real deal. There's a picture. They got the London Bridge, or not the London Bridge. Excuse me, the Tower Bridge. The London Bridge is in Arizona.
Correct. That is the Tower Bridge.
Arizona, New Mexico. Anyway,
Arizona.
It's in the southeast. Whatever. We've got it because
one.
we're better than those fucks. Anyway, yes, there's a tugboat dragging this big old. It's a destroyer or whatever, big cannons and stuff.
Frigate. I don't know.
Going underneath the raised Tower Bridge.
Apparently they were blasting that theme song, but apparently there
you go. They did it right. All right. Sorry. I'm going to interrupt them. Do your job.
Oh, was it further down?
It's in from the AP in Berlin. Quote: Germany's Navy says there is no deeper message in the choice to blast the famed Imperial March, Darth Vader's theme song in Star Wars films, from one of its warships as it cruised down the River Thames through London this week. A bystander captured the spectacle Monday on video, which quickly went viral on social media. The song selection made waves across Europe. The warship is in the area for training and dropped anchor in London for a normal supply stop, the German Navy said. The commander chose the music freely. The Navy said in a statement Thursday, the choice of music has no deeper message. Other video recorded the warship. The name of the ship is the Braunschweig, playing London Calling, the great hit from The Clash. The song's title is drawn from the BBC London Calling. Whatever. The Braunschweig is named for a city in Germany's Lower Saxony, an area far, far away from the UK and part of the country's newest class of ocean-going corvettes.
Far, far away.
For its departure, the tugboat pulled the warship down the river near Tower Bridge as sailors without any lightsabers sadly stood on deck. I'm sorry, I read that poorly. For its departure, a tug pulled the warship down the river near Tower Bridge as sailors, without any lightsabers, sadly, stood on deck. This trip was the Braunschweig's second to the British capital, the German embassy in London wrote on social media platform X. The warship's commander is a big Star Wars fan and an admirer of the legendary musical scores of John Williams. He chooses a different Williams tune whenever his ship is visiting a foreign harbor. There is no word whether Anakin Skywalker himself was aboard. That motherfucker's dead. Don't fuck around with my Star Wars references. God damn.
Well, I mean, technically it was in the future, if you want to kind of think about it.
No, it's not. It's far, far away. It's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
That's what I would never have thought of, like, a ship like that, blasting music.
Yeah, I don't know.
Much period. I just thought it was kind of funny. Like, I wouldn't know what to think about, was it London, sailing on the river, having lunch, drinking tea.
Right.
All of a sudden, bah, 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 bah. Like, oh shit, the Germans are coming. Germans.
It does, like, it is an interesting, like, there is some, like, I could see, like, I mean, most.
It's an ominous tune.
Yeah, but I mean, and also, like, most of them are, there was, the friendly relations are fairly recent in the historical, mannerisms between those two nations.
Yeah.
And so, all right, one more. Let's get this out of here.
Hold on, give me a minute. Saw one, but there was a couple I skipped over last week that were good.
Wait a second.
Okay, yeah, that story.
Hold on a second.
That story.
All
right, whatever.
Oh, no, I don't want to watch no damn ad. Shut up.
That story did show up in the News of the Weird.
Oh, good. I'm glad. It made it official. Anyway, keep looking. I'm going to get this commercial out of the way because they're going to show the video that the guy referenced.
Big are those freaking speakers.
That's awesome.
I forgot to tell you there was an actual video of it.
Love it.
Maybe I should have just sent you the video. What the fuck?
Love it. Way to go, German. Random.
That's awesome. Which of those guys love serving forms? Probably a guy that's probably fun to serve under.
Yeah. Depends where they're going and where they're coming from right now, I suppose, on how they're feeling. Anywho, one more. Give us some good stuff. Make it something I don't get too angry about.
Oh, goodness. All right, we got some meth, some alcohol, or a missing child.
Missing child sounds like a bummer. Let's go for alcohol.
All right. Oh, jeez. All right. All right, about to doubt. The mayor of a small Georgia town has been indicted on charges that he illegally left a handle of gin in a ditch for a state prison work crew.
Oh, damn.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, damn.
Let's see. Thompson Mayor Benjamin Benji Carey Cranford. That's a long name. Was indicted on Wednesday and arrested by Georgia Bureau of Investigation agents. He faces felony charges of furnishing prohibited items to inmates and attempt to commit a felony.
All right, cool. No
He's
complaints.
Out on a $5,000 bail.
He's going to go to jail and not get to drink in jail because he got inmates' drinks.
Bring a handle of gin and stow it in the ditch for you.
Oh, classy. Where was it again?
Thompson, Georgia. Without a P. Thompson, Georgia. It's weird.
Without a P?
Yeah.
Thompson.
Yeah.
Huh.
Thomson. Thompson.
I mean, that seems like
it's kind of hard to say with
Thompson.
Thompson.
I figured out. I'm officially announcing my intent to run for office. I think.
Shit.
I think I figured out what it is. Anybody out there wants to help me out?
Property assessor.
County clerk. I
thought you already called that one.
I want to be Sherry Witt.
Thought it was going to be something.
Because apparently, actually, I'm sorry. We were going to close the show. We lost a whole bunch of wheel tax money. See that story?
No.
So
we're missing funds, basically.
I'm really confused on it. I'm waiting for some more reporting to come out because I don't understand it. But yeah, so we have more cars registered in Knox County because we have more residents in Knox County, but our wheel tax income has gone down. I think somebody forgot that we had a whole year where we didn't collect wheel tax.
That's right, yeah.
And I'm
pretty sure I still paid mine.
I didn't pay mine. I paid mine on one of my cars, but not the other.
I'll have to go back and look. I swear I didn't get that year that I didn't have to pay.
Yeah, we had so I think that my guess is that's what's happened, and everybody just kind of forgot about it. But Chris Caldwell was like, we're confused on this a little bit. Our actual number of wheel tax dollars went down, but we know there's more cars here.
Right.
And then Sherry Witt said, we're looking into it. We can't figure it out yet.
I mean, depending on when people moved here, you may still technically have your registration. I'm sure there's you're supposed to have your plate swapped over by a certain time, but I mean, if you just move from a state
until your registration's dead, you keep it going. It's good.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's technically invalid because you don't live there anymore with that registration.
I don't know. I don't know how that shit works, but yeah, I don't know what the deal is because that's what I'm waiting on. Like, I feel like that's what actually happened, or maybe that was 2 years ago. I don't remember when that was. I don't remember exactly when that was.
That was in the last year.
Yeah, I thought it was last. I thought it was in the 22 session they did it, and starting July 22 to July 23. When you registered from July in 22 until July 23, when you registered your vehicle, you didn't pay wheel tax that year.
Yeah,
that was my recollection of it. And that would explain why there's less money in the wheel tax fund.
Right.
But, no, because the exemption was for the state part of it, not the local part.
Right.
So the local part should have stayed the same or gone up. And so, I don't know.
It still cuts it in half.
Waiting for more. Yeah, but we only get the local part. The state gets the other part. So the state just doesn't get theirs.
Okay.
We were still supposed to get our part, I think. I don't know. I'm waiting for more reporting on it because I just remember, anyway. So, yeah, that's the show, everybody. We'll be back next week with more on the wheel tax, maybe. Button. Almost Agreement's back. I've been drinking beer because I didn't get to drink beer last time because we were doing a day show. Almost Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. Check out Hollerboo, hollerboo.com. Hollerboo is happening. Register your derby car, your vendor, if you got a food truck or something like that. Come hang out with us. It'll be a good time. We have a good crowd. We will have a good crowd, and you're going to make a bunch of money if you're a vendor, so do it. We need some volunteers. We need some sponsors. We need all sorts of cool stuff. If you want to get in on it, hollerboo.com is the way to get in touch with us and to take part in our cool activities. Almost agreement at gmail.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Tell your friends about us. We're going to keep doing shows. We're going to keep talking to people. I'm still working on a few things. I'm going to get Jennifer in here. We're going to do this session review mess. And we're going to argue about how stupid our legislature is because we already know that part, but it's more fun to get details. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you all soon.